Thunderbolts, welcome to our channel. Hollywood Movie Review. Thunderbolts 2025 Movie Review. Thunderbolts is a 2025 American superhero film based on Marvel Comics featuring the Team Thunderbolts. Produced by Marvel Studios and distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures, it is the 36th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU. The film was directed by Jake Schreier from a screenplay by Eric Pearson and Joanna Kahlo, and stars an ensemble cast featuring Florence, Pugh, Sebastian Stan, Wyatt Russell, Olga Kurylenko, Louis Pullman, Geraldine Viswanathan, Chris Bauer, Wendell Pierce, David Harbour, Hannah John Kamen, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus. In the film, a group of anti-heroes are caught in a trap and forced to work together on a mission that uncovers their traumatic pasts. Marvel Studios first teased the formation of an MCU Thunderbolts team in 2021. The film was revealed to be in development in June 2022, when Schreier and Pearson were attached. The main cast was revealed in September, with additional casting through early 2023. Lee Sung-jin joined to rewrite the script by March 2023, one of several creatives who returned to work with Schreier from the Netflix series Beef, 2023, present. Production was delayed by the 2023 Hollywood labor disputes, causing some cast changes in early 2024. Kahlo joined by then for further rewrites. Filming took place from February to June 2024 at Trilith Studios and Atlanta Metro Studios in Atlanta, Georgia, and on location in Utah and Kuala Lumpur. Thunderbolts * premiered on April 22, 2025, at the Cineworld Leicester Square in London, England, and was released in the United States on May 2 as the final film of Phase 5 of the MCU. The meaning of the titles * was the subject of commentary during marketing and was explained by the reveal at the end of the film that the Thunderbolts team is rebranded as the New Avengers. The title is changed to the New Avengers during the end credits and in some post-release marketing. The film received positive reviews from critics with praise for its approach to mental health and the performances of Pugh and Pullman and several accolades. It underperformed at the box office, grossing $382.4 million. In Kuala Lumpur, Yelena Belova destroys a laboratory on behalf of CIA Director Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, who is attempting to destroy any evidence of her involvement with the OXE Group's Project Sentry. As de Fontaine faces imminent impeachment for her work with the OXE Group, she dispatches Yelena, John Walker, Ava Starr, and Antonia Dreykov, all operatives who have worked for her, to a covered OXE facility with orders to kill each other. In the ensuing fight, Ava kills Antonia while an amnesiac man named Bob is released from a suspended animation pod in the room. After realizing that they were sent by de Fontaine to be incinerated along with any evidence of her misconduct, they work together to escape from the trap. Upon coming into physical contact with Bob, Yelena and Walker briefly experience visions of some of their worst memories. De Fontaine learns that the group has survived and that Bob was a presumed dead volunteer in the Sentry trials. When she arrives at the site, Bob creates a diversion by drawing enemy fire, allowing Yelena, Walker, and Ava to escape. Bob sustains no injuries upon being shot, uncontrollably ascends into the air, crash lands back at the compound, and is captured and transported to the former Avengers Tower in Manhattan, now renamed the Watchtower. De Fontaine intends to introduce Bob to the press as a superpowered protector akin to the Avengers, hoping the PR stunt will avert her impeachment. Meanwhile, Yelena's father figure Alexei Shostakov, who overheard details of de Fontaine's plot while working as a freelance chauffeur, rescues Yelena, Walker, and Ava. Walker refers to the group as the Thunderbolts, inspired by Yelena's childhood soccer team. Congressman Bucky Barnes is tipped off about what has happened by de Fontaine's assistant Mel. He captures the Thunderbolts and intends to have them testify in the impeachment proceedings. When Mel expresses concern about Bob, Barnes takes the group to New York City to infiltrate the Watchtower. The Thunderbolts discover that de Fontaine has convinced Bob to join her and become the superhero Sentry. Bob easily overpowers the Thunderbolts, but he ignores de Fontaine's order to kill them and allows them to retreat, believing that they are not a threat to him. Developing a godlike delusion of superiority, Bob turns on DeFontaine and is incapacitated by Mel using a fail-safe kill switch. This triggers the emergence of the Void, Bob's destructive alter ego and the embodiment of his depression and insecurities, which have been amplified by the Sentry procedure. The Void begins to engulf New York City in supernatural darkness, trapping its citizens in visions of their own traumatic memories. Realizing that the only way to stop the Void is from within, Yelena enters the darkness to reach Bob's consciousness. She faces her haunted past as a Black Widow, and finds Bob hiding in a recreation of his childhood bedroom where he hid from his abusive father. The other Thunderbolts join them, and together they face off with Bob's various traumas and drug addiction until they reach his memory of the Sentry procedure in the Kuala Lumpur laboratory. They find the Void and are swiftly overpowered. Bob's attempts to fight back threaten to consume him completely, until the Thunderbolts hug Bob and affirm their belief in him, empowering him to regain control and overcome the Void. Light returns to the city and the victims are freed. With the threat of the Void neutralized, the Thunderbolts prepare to apprehend DeFontaine, but she manipulates public perception by staging a press conference in which she introduces the team as the new Avengers and takes credit for their actions. The group goes along with the announcement, but Yelena quietly tells DeFontaine, "We own you now." In a post-credits scene set 14 months later, the new Avengers and Bob discuss a growing feud with Sam Wilson, who has his own Avengers team and is suing the new Avengers for trademark infringement. There is also an ongoing problem in outer space, and the group are interrupted when the Watchtower detects the arrival of an extra-dimensional spacecraft that has a large 4 emblem on the side. During the production of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU, film Guardians of the Galaxy, 2014, director James Gunn expressed interest in making a film based on the Marvel Comics team Thunderbolts, a group of anti-heroes and supercriminals. Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige said this was a possibility based on the success of Guardians of the Galaxy. By May 2021, Gunn was no longer interested in the idea after directing the DC Extended Universe, DCEU, film The Suicide Squad, 2021, because that team from DC Comics is based on a similar concept to the Thunderbolts. In June 2018, Hannah John Kamen expressed enthusiasm for reprising her role as Ava Star/Ghost from the MCU film Ant-Man and the Wasp, 2018, in a potential Thunderbolts film, considering the comics version of Ghost is a member of the team. Speculation that a Thunderbolts team would be introduced to the MCU began in mid-2019 following the announcement that Daniel Bruhl would appear as Helmut Zima in the Disney Plus series The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, 2021, reprising his role from the MCU film Captain America, Civil War, 2016. That series introduced Julia Louis-Dreyfus as Valentina Allegra DeFontaine and shows her recruiting Wyatt Russell's John Walker/US agent. DeFontaine is also shown to be working with Florence Pugh's Yelena Belova in the post-credits scene of the MCU film Black Widow, 2021. Commentators speculated that she was recruiting a team of villains or antiheroes like the Thunderbolts, and some felt that team could appear in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Executive producer Nate Moore said the Thunderbolts were never considered for the project because they would cloud the story and take away from other aspects of the series. Head writer Malcolm Spellman said there was a lot of chatter around the team's potential introduction to the MCU and added, "I don't know if fans are crazy or not." Following his work on Black Widow, writer Eric Pearson brought the idea of a Thunderbolts film to Marvel Studios, realizing that Pugh had the potential to headline the film, given that Yelena was a natural leader. He was drawn to the story potential of her leading the Thunderbolts to go up against DeFontaine. Because he planned to center the story on Yelena, Pearson decided to include her father Alexei Shostakov/Red Guardian on the team, while also including Ghost because he had wanted to write the character. Bucky Barnes/Winter Soldier was also added to the team after a few drafts. The roster for the team eventually became Yelena, Shostakov, Ghost, Barnes, Walker, and Antonia Dreykov/Taskmaster, with the character Bob Reynolds/Sentry added shortly after. This roster stayed consistent through subsequent drafts. To choose the team members, the creatives had looked through the roster of MCU characters to find not just bad guys who could be good but characters that exist more on that morally gray plane or who were potentially destined for something else but then something went awry. Pearson likened Yelena to Michael Corleone and Barnes to Tom Hagen, characters from Mario Puzo's novel The Godfather, 1969. In some of the initial drafts, Pearson included Bill Foster/Goliath to continue his relationship with Ghost from Ant-Man and the Wasp, before joining the team by the end of the film. He was ultimately removed from the film, however, partly because Foster didn't have the same background trauma that these other characters had, which was the unifying theme. By June 2022, Jake Schreier was attached to direct Thunderbolts, from a screenplay by Pearson, with Feige producing. Schreier was hired after a presentation that blew away Marvel Studios executives. At that time, the studio had been in contact with actors to discuss their availability to reprise their roles for the film. Schreier had considered including Man-Thing as a member of the team while pitching for the film, who Pearson called an unpredictable creature, explaining that they could not find a way to have his inclusion make sense for the story, in part because the character was drawing visual and narrative attention away from Bob. Another core concept that stayed consistent from the early drafts was the members being sent to kill each other, which Schreier believed provided a neat twist for audiences expecting Marvel Studios' version of the Suicide Squad. Pearson also believed it was important for Thunderbolts not to rehash the story beats of that team, an authority figure forcing criminals to work together, since audiences would have been familiar with that from the DCEU film Suicide Squad, 2016, and its sequel The Suicide Squad. Thus it did not make sense for the film to include Zima or Thaddeus Ross, the leaders who had formed the team in the comics, despite Schreier wanting to try to incorporate Zima. Pearson said the two characters' inclusion was discussed to consider whether it made sense narratively, as it would have honored the comics, but they would not have featured if it was only for fan service. Zima was included in an early post-credits scene idea where he would have been seen in prison pulling the strings similar to Kaiser Soze, the antagonist in the film The Usual Suspects, 1995, but this was quickly moved on from. The film was officially announced in July at San Diego Comic-Con, SDCC, with a release date of July 26, 2024. It was set to be the last film in Phase 5 of the MCU. In September 2022, Justin Kroll of Deadline Hollywood described the film as a spin-off for Yelena because she was expected to lead the anti-hero team, with Pugh and Russell believed to be reprising their roles, along with the inclusion of Bruhl. 52 at the D23 Expo later that month. Pugh, Russell, John Kamen, and Louis Dreyfus were confirmed to star, alongside Sebastian Stan as Barnes, David Harbour as Red Guardian, and Olga Kurylenko as Taskmaster, all reprising their roles from previous MCU projects. Pugh was set to be paid 8 figures for Thunderbolts and another MCU film. Prior to the cast announcement for the team, commentators had also suggested it could have included characters such as Emil Blinsky/Abomination or Clint Barton/Hawkeye. Schreier compared the character dynamics to those in the films Reservoir Dogs, 1992, Ronin, 1998, and Mission: Impossible, Ghost Protocol, 2011, which are all about a mismatched team forced to work together. He also pointed to a less likely inspiration in the film Toy Story 3, 2010, saying the Thunderbolts members are all facing obsolescence like the Toy Story characters are in that film. Harbour said the film would be unique in the MCU, describing the main cast as a bunch of misfits and outcasts and losers and people who don't really live up to the superhero. Pugh said the joy of uniting these characters was that they don't play well together, while Russell expressed confidence that the film would be interesting, fun, and not a straightforward Marvel film. Journalist Jeff Snyder reported that Pearson's script focused too much on the characters returning from Black Widow, which he also wrote, and Marvel Studios was looking for the other characters to have a more equitable role so it would feel like an ensemble film. Schreier did not believe the film was a Black Widow sequel but rather a sampling of people from different parts of the MCU, acknowledging the writers pulled from all of their histories, including Yelena and Shostakovich's relationship that was established in Black Widow. One of Pearson's drafts started the film with a scene of Yelena confronting DeFontaine about sending her to kill Barton, furthering the storyline that was established in the post-credits scene of Black Widow and continued in the Disney Plus series Hawkeye, 2021. Pearson said their confrontation helped emphasize DeFontaine's manipulation but ultimately was not relevant to the larger story being told. A.O. Edbury joined the cast in January 2023 as DeFontaine's assistant Mel when Louis Dreyfus said filming would begin that June. In February, Stephen Yeun was cast as Sentry with the potential to continue in future MCU films. Yeun worked with Schreier on the Netflix series Beef, 2023, present, and the director had the actor in mind when adding the character. The next month, Beef creator Lee Sung-jin revealed that he was rewriting the script at Schreier's request and said there were a lot of themes and exciting things that drew him to the project. He worked closely with Schreier on the script and noted that, unlike Beef, Thunderbolts was Schreier's project and had different writing needs than the series, given the film's large scope and scale. With the team largely consistent, Schreier worked in subsequent drafts to go deeper with the characters on the margins such as Mel and Congressman Gary and their arcs together into something that would feel resonant. At the start of May 2023, filming was delayed due to the 2023 Writers Guild of America strike and was planned to resume after the strike concluded. In June, the release date was pushed back to December 20, 2024, and the Utah Film Commission announced that Thunderbolts would film in Emery County and Grand County, Utah, spending over $4.5 million in the state. Chapek said the grounded, globe-trotting film would use several practical filming locations and the Utah locations were chosen because they felt untouched by the larger world. Sanya Milkovic-Hayes was the costume designer after working on the MCU films Captain Marvel, 2019, and Spider-Man, No Way Home, 2021. When the 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike ended in November, the release date was pushed back again, this time to July 25, 2025. Upon returning from the strike, Schreier and the creatives were able to re-examine the script. They determined that there was no sense of tension and unpredictability, and the film felt bloodless when there should be the tension of not knowing who would survive, given who these characters are. To solve this, they decided to rework Taskmaster's involvement in the film, killing the character early and dry in the film to have her death resonate and inform the fates of the other characters throughout the rest of the film. Having the death occur later in the film was also discussed, but Schreier said the sadness from it would hang over the rest of the film and distract from the intended storyline of forming a strong bond between Yelena and Bob. In Pearson's original draft, Taskmaster survived until the end and had a subplot where she bonded with Ghost, as well as a recurring joke where she kept forgetting she had made friends with the other characters and was still trying to assassinate Walker because of her memory loss. Pearson understood why the decision was made to kill Taskmaster, also believing the memory loss assassination joke drifted too close to Bob's arc as he also was dealing with memory loss. Additionally, his post-credit scene featuring Kong the Conqueror was abandoned because Marvel Studios had decided to move away from that storyline. Following the strike caused production delays, filming was slated to begin around March or April 2024. Yeun exited in January 2024 due to a scheduling issue caused by the delayed production, but expressed interest in working on a future MCU film. It was unclear if Marvel would recast or rethink Yeun's role, but at the end of the month Louis Pullman was revealed to be the studio's top choice to replace Yeun as Sentry, and his casting was soon confirmed. Geraldine Viswanathan was cast to replace Edbury as Mel after she exited due to the delays. In February, the release date was moved forward to May 2, 2025, swapping places with the MCU film The Fantastic Four: First Steps. By the end of the month, Joanna Kahlo had joined to serve as the writer during production and was rewriting the script. For the film's final writing credits, Pearson was credited for the story and received a screenplay credit alongside Kahlo, while additional off-screen literary material was attributed to Lee. The script explores mental health, specifically loneliness and depression, particularly with Bob/Sentry. Pearson always envisioned ending the film with the emotional moment of giving someone a hug rather than fighting them. Before Sentry was added to the film, Walker was intended to be the main antagonist, with DeFontaine manipulating him into believing his super soldier serum was wearing off and giving him pills as a solution, making him into a time bomb that made him more unlikable and the monster. Pearson said this version didn't ever totally work, and Walker's actions felt too similar to the plotline of Thaddeus Ross becoming the Red Hulk in the MCU film Captain America: Brave New World, 2025. Pearson had considered Red Hulk for the film's villain early in the process, which Marvel Studios declined because of their intended plans for Brave New World. Looking for a new antagonist that would not easily be beatable in a fight, Pearson remembered reading the Sentry miniseries years prior and felt Sentry and his alter ego the Void would work for heroic ambition and self-esteem versus depression and self-loathing and loneliness and isolation. He called Sentry the entire journey for our heroes rolled into one entity, and his inclusion helped make the story cohesive. Pearson was glad he was able to incorporate many elements of the character's comics backstory to fit into the MCU. Said backstory, consisting of Sentry erasing himself from the world's memories to stop the Void, was avoided because it was similar to the plot of No Way Home, in which Peter Parker/Spider-Man also has himself erased from memory. Paul Jenkins, co-creator of Sentry, discussed the character with the creatives, with Schreier calling Sentry and the work Jenkins did with the character a parable for mental health. Schreier explained that Lee felt mental health discussion was not niche anymore, and it allowed them to tell a story about that internality and still have a lot of comedy and action for something that feels big and universal. The Thunderbolts team believed the film was a good opportunity to further explore ideas they had started to explore in Beef on a larger scale. Executive producer Brian Chapek came up with the idea that, to defeat Sentry, the Thunderbolts would have to enter the Void, which manifested memories of their greatest shame, dubbed shame rooms. Lee worked closely with production designer Grace Yoon, who also served that role on Beef, to create the initial specifics of each room. Pearson had originally envisioned them as ethereal and dreamy, but believed making them mazes akin to those seen in the film being John Malkovich, 1999, helped with visualizing the concept and made them feel more unsettling. Kahlo further enhanced the shame rooms, suggesting that when Yelena enters to Void to help Bob that she returned to her initial room seen earlier in the film. Schreier explained that this made a callback of the idea that the greatest shame of all was thinking that you could be something bigger than yourself, that Bob's aspirations towards heroism are actually what brings everything down, and that you need to learn to be okay with who you are without that. Shame rooms for Yelena, Walker, and DeFontaine are visible, with rooms for the other characters conceived for the film's finale, allowing the team to escape through them. However, Kahlo felt strongly that to journey to the heart of the Void, there needed to be a big bad moment beforehand, and the team should journey through Bob's shame rooms. The other shame rooms included, Shostakov being thrown in the Gulag, Ghost growing up in an orphanage with no one wanting to be around her, and multiple different ones for Bucky that were a little less than the expected idea, including a shameful moment in the Boy Scouts. Schreier had suggested during his pitch meeting that one of the film's posters or trailers should use an asterisk in the title to imply they needed to come up with something better. Feige, Marvel Studios co-president Luis D'Esposito, and the marketing team loved this idea and decided to fully embrace it for the title and marketing campaign, with the film formally retitled to Thunderbolts * by March 2024. This allowed the creatives to realize that having the asterisk could lead to the reveal of a new title for the film once it was released, which was subsequently done, changing the title to The New Avengers after the ending reveals the Thunderbolts to be the New Avengers. Schreier said the ending was always going to have the Thunderbolts revealed as the New Avengers team, and the rest of the film became about building the right story that lived up to that. Pearson explained that Feige suggesting DeFontaine should introduce the Thunderbolts to the public as the Avengers. Additional discussions were had on what this meant, such as if the N in new should be upper or lowercase, and what the implications of each decision would mean. Thunderbolts * included little hints throughout, so the ending did not come as a total surprise. such as the Battle of New York Gala, Avengers Tower becoming the Watchtower, and Mel explaining how she was in high school when the Avengers first formed. Additionally, the credits and the post-credit sequences acknowledge that the new Avengers is not necessarily the most comfortable or perfect fit for these characters. The original Thunderbolts name was derived from Yelena's youth soccer team. Filming was originally scheduled to begin in mid-June 2023 and last for 6 months. It was initially not expected to be impacted by the writers' strike, with Marvel Studios reportedly planning to shoot what they could during principal photography and make any necessary writing adjustments during already scheduled reshoots. Filming was ultimately delayed by the writers' strike and subsequent SAG-AFTRA strike. The original filming schedule overlapped with Stan's work on the film The Apprentice, 2024, for which he gained weight to portray Donald Trump. He had begun the physical transformation needed to portray Barnes when the strikes began and he had to reverse course. Harbour planned to shoot the film concurrently with his scenes as Jim Hopper for the 5th season of Stranger Things, 2025, also in Atlanta. That production was also delayed by the strikes. Principal photography began by February 26, 2024, at Trilith Studios and Atlanta Metro Studios in Atlanta, Georgia, under the working title Oops All Berries, which is a reference to a variation of the cereal Captain Crunch that only has berry-flavored pieces. Andrew Draws Palermo was the cinematographer, having previously worked on the Marvel Studios series Moon Knight, 2022. He replaced Steve Yedlin, who was originally intended to work on the film. The film was shot for IMAX. Filming occurred in Emery County and Grand County, Utah, from May 29 to June 12, 2024. Louis Dreyfus completed her scenes by early June, and said Marvel Studios was trying to go back to their roots with a focus on the characters' humanity, practical stunt sequences, and avoiding visual effects where possible. Furthermore, Schreier intended for the film's fight scenes to look as realistic as possible, though a notable exception is the fight between the Thunderbolts and Sentry at the penthouse of the former Avengers Tower, now referred to as the Watchtower, as both Schreier and the stunt team wanted to use the scene to emphasize the magnitude of Sentry's powers, something that required weeks of rehearsal and careful choreography by Pullman and stunt double Alec Back to be conveyed. Pullman stated that the fight was a big scene because that really is where you get to see Sentry. It's a small window of real estate where you get to really demonstrate what Sentry is capable of. Filming also took place at the Medan Pasar Square and Merdeka 118 skyscraper in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Pugh was insistent on filming the scene where Yelena jumps off the top of Merdeka 118 without the use of stunt doubles. Marvel Studios was initially reluctant to allow Pugh to perform the stunt for insurance reasons, but after continually pushing the matter, including to Feige, she was allowed to perform the jump. For Yelena's trip through the shame rooms to save Bob, Palermo used a handmade aesthetic similar to indie films such as Being John Malkovich, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, 2004, and those produced by A24 such as Everything Everywhere All at Once, 2022. Feige championed doing as many of the effects practically and in camera as possible, and Schreier noted the creatives liked the idea of doing a practical rendition of what getting stuck in a thought loop or a shame room would be. Filming concluded the week of June 19. In September 2024, Chris Bauer and Wendell Pierce were revealed to have been cast in the film, with Bauer playing Holt and Pierce playing Congressman Gary. The film's teaser trailer released that month revealed that Scarlett Johansson, who portrayed Natasha Romanoff/Black Widow in the MCU from 2010 to 2021, was credited as an executive producer. However, Johansson asked for her credit to be removed from the film because she had no involvement with it. In early December, additional photography took place in Atlanta, including to shoot the meth chicken shame room sequence from Bob's Memories. Harry Yoon and Angela Catanzaro edited the film. Yoon previously worked on the MCU film Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, 2021, and with Schreier on Beef. Jake Morrison is the visual effects supervisor, with visual effects provided by Industrial Light and Magic, ILM, Framestore, Digital Domain, Rising Sun Pictures, RSP, Reynolds VFX, Base FX, Crafty Apes, and Mammal Studios. Thunderbolts * includes a post-credits scene set 14 months after the end of the film where the new Avengers, discussing a problem in outer space, are notified of an extra-dimensional spacecraft entering Earth 616, which is revealed to be the Fantastic Fours. Schreier said the scene was filmed approximately a month before the release of Thunderbolts *, on the set of the MCU crossover film Avengers, Doomsday, 2026, by its directors, the Russo brothers, and was intended for that film. Schreier was on set when the post-credits scene was filmed. Schreier helped conceive the scene while noting the characters were being given over to a whole new world and new scope to function in, and enjoyed seeing them directed in another context and on a different level of scope than had been done for this film. Pearson believed Kahlo had written the post-credits scene. It originally included a sequence that was cut where Barnes and Walker had a "Who's on first" style exchange about the ship having the number 4 on it. Stan called the bit genius and was sad it had been cut, with Russell saying the exchange became a Leslie Nielsen sketch. The band's son Lux began recording the score for Thunderbolts * at Abbey Road Studios in London in the first week of February 2025, after member Ryan Lott previously scored Schreier's film Paper Towns, 2015. A soundtrack album featuring their music was released by Hollywood Records and Marvel Music on April 30, 2002. After filming had begun in March 2024, Pugh and Marvel Studios released a set video in which she showcased her new Black Widow costume and an updated logo for the film with Schreier. The new logo styled the title as Thunderbolts *. Kristen Lopez at the Wrap felt viewers would start deconstructing the brief images she's shown immediately, while Sabina Graves of Gizmodo felt the video was delightful and a fun tease for a scene featuring Yelena. She highlighted Pugh's short hair and her joking with Schreier that they really shouldn't be showing any of this. Collider's Chris McPherson also discussed Pugh's costume, calling it very military and quite tactical, and noted her teal eyeliner. Several commentators questioned why there was an asterisk in the updated logo. The next month, Feige confirmed that Thunderbolts * was the official title and said the use of the asterisk would be explained following the film's release, which led to continued speculation as to its meaning. One theory suggested the team would not be called the Thunderbolts in the film, but rather a variation of the Avengers name such as the Dark Avengers or New Avengers. Another suggestion stated there was another Thunderbolts team in the MCU with characters more closely aligned to the rosters from the comics. A behind-the-scenes look was shown at Cine Europe in June 2024, while the first footage from the film was shown at SDCC the next month, presented by Schreier and the cast. Harbour dressed as Red Guardian for the panel. Following online leaks of the SDCC footage, Marvel released an official look at the Thunderbolts team within their video celebrating the company's 85th anniversary in August. A teaser trailer for the film was released a month later, featuring the song Where Is My Mind? By the Pixies. Tom Power at Tech Radar said the teaser was a longer and higher quality version of the previously leaked footage, and felt the film was looking very good. He highlighted the characters' struggles with identity as well as the action and tone of the teaser. Writing for the AV Club, Mary-Kate Carr noted the various mysteries surrounding the film, including the asterisk in its title, and said the teaser valiantly refused to give up any secrets or plot details. A second trailer was shown during Super Bowl 59 in February 2025. Commentators stated that the trailer appeared to confirm speculation that the titular team would be fighting the Void, the malevolent alter ego of Bob/Sentry. In the trailer, Red Guardian expresses hope that the team's achievements would get them featured on the cover of Wheaties, a cereal known for putting sports figures on its boxes, and the slogan "The Breakfast of Champions." Alongside the trailer, Marvel Studios released a poster for the film that mimicked a Wheaties box featuring the team. Their social media posts for the poster were captioned "The Breakfast of Champions Thunderbolts." An asterisk-themed international poster was also released, which included a footnote for the title asterisk which says "The Avengers are not available." Kieran Fisher at /Film questioned whether this was a joke, or if it was the true meaning behind the asterisk in the film's title. James Whitbrook of Gizmodo and Scott Kalura from IGN both believed the footnote fit with the film's marketing approach of presenting the team as a ragtag humorous group of heroes, rather than the asterisk being an actual serious mystery. In March 2025, Letterboxd debuted a trailer for the film that is edited in the style of those for independent films produced by A24. It features techno music, an A24-esque makeover for the Marvel Studios logo, and title cards that highlight past A24 projects that the film's cast and crew members worked on. Schreier helped conceive the trailer, which was released around the same time Pugh described the film as an indie, A24 feeling assassin movie with Marvel superheroes. Zasha Millman from Polygon said Marvel had film buffs in mind when releasing the trailer through Letterboxd. Despite the creative pedigree touted by the trailer, she thought Thunderbolts * would still be largely what you expect of a Marvel film. A24 was not aware of the trailer before its release and responded on social media with a meme from its HBO drama series Euphoria, 2019 to 2026. Later in March, Marvel Studios announced that many MCU cast members would be reprising their roles for Doomsday, including Stan, Russell, Pugh, Pullman, Harbour, and John Kamen. Commentators discussed whether this announcement, which seemingly revealed characters who survived the film's events and aligned with speculation that Taskmaster would die early in the story due to limited presence in trailers, was a spoiler. Michael Walsh, a Nerdist, criticized the announcement, feeling it had undermined one of the key reasons some people were interested in Thunderbolts *, which was the feeling that any of the main cast could die. He compared this to spoiling who survives the events of the film The Dirty Dozen, 1967, and said Marvel should have excluded the Thunderbolts * cast members from the Doomsday announcement. Amelia Emberwing of IGN said knowing who makes it out alive much in a comic book franchise, and also felt the announcement was not necessarily a spoiler because the returning actors could be playing versions of their characters from other universes within the multiverse. Various fan screenings occurred on April 22, 2025, in 10 major cities across the US. At the end of April, Marvel announced a collaboration with Wheaties to create a limited edition box of the cereal, mimicking the Wheaties-inspired poster for the film. The film's marketing campaign was valued between $75 to $100 million, and featured partnerships with Harley-Davidson, Tide, Wheaties, Mike and Ike, Cupra Kiro with Formula E Racing, LinkedIn, Perfect Sports, and Arizona Beverage Company. Following the film's opening weekend, Marvel Studios rebranded the film as The New Avengers. The studio released a video of the cast tearing away the Thunderbolts * logo from the poster to reveal the New Avengers. Billboards and theater marquees were also updated to the New Avengers, and new posters were released. Schreier explained that revealing and embracing the updated title felt like it was part of the studio's plan and had been built up to since the asterisk was first included in the film's title. Disney clarified that the film was not formally retitled, just that the asterisk was spelled out, and ticketing services still listed the film as Thunderbolts *, despite featuring the updated posters with the New Avengers name. Sydney Bucksbaum of Entertainment Weekly felt this was the first instance of film planned in advance to change its title a few days after its release for narrative purposes. Thunderbolts * had its European premiere on April 22, 2025, at the Cineworld Leicester Square, London, and its Los Angeles premiere on April 28, 2025. The film was released in the United States on May 2, in IMAX, Dolby Cinema, RealD 3D, ScreenX, and 4DX. It was previously scheduled for July 26, 2024, December 20, 2024, and July 25, 2025. It is the final film of Phase 5 of the MCU. Thunderbolts * was released for digital download on July 1, 2025, and on Ultra HD Blu-ray, and DVD on July 29. The home media releases, all bearing the title Thunderbolts *, The New Avengers, include 2 deleted scenes, a gag reel, director's commentary, and featurettes. The film was released on Disney Plus on August 27. In the United Kingdom, Thunderbolts * debuted at number 2 on the official film chart for the week ending July 9. 3 weeks later, for the week ending July 30, the film ranked number 8. It then rose to number 6 for the week ending August 6, up from number 8 the previous week. Thunderbolts * reached number 1 for the week ending August 13, rising from number 6. The film retained the top spot for the following week ending August 20. For the week ending August 27, it moved to no 3. The film ranked number 10 for the week ending September 3, moving down from number 3 the previous week. In the United States, Thunderbolts * placed 10th on Fandango at Home's digital sales and rentals chart for 2025 and ranked 4th on the platform's top 5 action movies of 2025 list. On physical media, Thunderbolts * debuted at number 1 on the Circana Videoscan combined DVD and Blu-ray sales chart, as well as the dedicated Blu-ray and 4K Ultra HD charts, for the week ended August 2. High-definition formats accounted for 74% of first-week sales, with 35% from regular Blu-ray and 39% from 4K Ultra HD editions. The film remained at number 1 on the Circana Videoscan combined DVD and Blu-ray chart and the dedicated Blu-ray chart for the week ended August 9. In its second week, high-definition formats accounted for 62% of total unit sales, with 43% from regular Blu-ray, up 8 points from the first week, and 19% from 4K Ultra HD editions, down 20 points, causing it to move to number 2 on the 4K Ultra HD disc chart. For the week ended August 16, Thunderbolts * moved to number 3 on the combined DVD and Blu-ray chart after 2 weeks at number 1, while remaining number 2 on both the dedicated Blu-ray and 4K Ultra HD charts. High-definition formats accounted for 74% of total unit sales that week, with 35% from regular Blu-ray and 39% from 4K Ultra HD editions. Through October 2025, the film ranked 4th in year-to-date disc sales on Circana's chart. It ranked 5th on the top-selling titles on disc, DVD and Blu-ray combined, of 2025, according to Circana. Thunderbolts recorded a sales index of 38.03 relative to the year's top-selling title. Blu-ray formats accounted for 68% of total unit sales, including a 30% share from 4K Ultra HD. The film also placed 4th on the top-selling Blu-ray discs of 2025 and 10th on the top-selling 4K Ultra HD Blu-rays of 2025. Streaming analytics firm FlixPatrol, which monitors daily updated VOD charts and streaming ratings across the globe, reported that Thunderbolts * became the most streamed film on Disney Plus in the US and the third most streamed worldwide after 1 day of release. Analytics company Samba TV, which gathers viewership data from certain smart TVs and content providers, stated it was watched by approximately 449,000 households during its first 6 days on digital platforms. Nielsen Media Research, which records streaming viewership on certain U.S. television screens, announced that Thunderbolts * was streamed for 702 million minutes from August 25 to 31, making it the third most streamed film of the week. In the following week, from September 1 to 7, it recorded 368 million minutes of viewing time, placing 5th among films. Thunderbolts * grossed $190.3 million in the United States and Canada, and $192.2 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $382.4 million. It is one of the lowest-grossing MCU films. Rebecca Rubin at Variety reported that the film needed to earn an unachievable $425 million worldwide to break even. Based on slightly cheaper than usual costs for an MCU film, the production budget was $180 million and the marketing budget was $100 million. Rubin and Brent Lang said Thunderbolts * and the other two 2025 MCU films, Brave New World and First Steps, were all commercial duds and part of a lousy streak for Marvel Studios. Feige attributed the low box office performance to audiences believing they needed to watch the MCU's Disney Plus series in order to understand the film, He felt the studio should have better explained that this was not necessary. In mid-April 2025, Thunderbolts * was projected to have a $63 to $77 million opening weekend in the United States, with the target number expected to be $70 million. By the end of the month, the film was projected to earn $70 to $75 million domestically and $160 to $175 million globally on its opening weekend, with some domestic projections going as high as $80 to $90 million. The film earned $31.5 million domestically in its opening day, including $11.5 million from Thursday night previews. The film would gross $74.3 million in its domestic opening weekend, while also earning $86.1 million internationally for a total of $160.1 million, including $20 million from IMAX screenings. In its second weekend the film made $33.1 million, remaining atop the box office. The 55% drop was noted as good for an MCU film, compared to the 68% second weekend decrease by Brave New World earlier that year. It made $17 million on its third weekend, a drop of 52%, and it dropped to second behind the new release of Final Destination Bloodlines. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, 88% of critics gave Thunderbolts a positive review, with an average rating of the critics' consensus reads, assembling a ragtag band of underdogs with Florence Pugh as their magnetic standout, Thunderbolts refreshingly goes back to the tried and true blueprint of the MCU's best adventures. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 68 out of 100 based on 53 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Critics called it a return to form for the MCU, highlighting the character development, visuals, action sequences, and performances. The handling of mental health issues and the performances of Pugh and Pullman were especially praised. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A, on an A+ to F scale, while those surveyed by PostTrack gave it an average of 4.5 out of 5 stars, with 74% saying they would definitely recommend the film. Writing for NPR, critic Bob Mondello gave Thunderbolt a generally positive review, calling the film a decently effective blend of misfit mercenaries and pop psychology. Jake Coyle of the Associated Press gave it stars, writing, all the assembled parts here, including an especially high-quality cast, even Wendell Pierce, work together seamlessly in a way that Marvel hasn't in some time. Most of all, Pugh commands every bit of the movie. Robbie Collin of the Daily Telegraph gave the film stars, writing, it's just dollop upon dollop of dourness, all the way to an end credits scene that has the nerve to tease brighter, less narratively convoluted times ahead. Talk about creating a market. Nicholas Barber of BBC Culture gave Thunderbolt a generally positive review, praising its character-driven approach and Pugh's performance. He noted that the film offers a more grounded and emotionally resonant narrative compared to recent Marvel releases, while still delivering the expected action and humor. I don't think too many people have been counting the seconds until Marvel's Thunderbolts gets released, and even I wasn't too interested with the early trailers. It wasn't until last week when I saw that Florence Pugh did that incredible stunt where she jumps off the building that I thought this might be better than expected. Everyone knows I'm not a comic book guy, but I always thought the Thunderbolts were created by Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, but I guess I was wrong. At least in the MCU that is not the case, although he does get mentioned. The first half is your typical MCU fare with regular wisecracks and set pieces, but it's really as the story progresses that this becomes truly intriguing. Thunderbolts is really about battling and overcoming depression and knowing you're not alone, which feels very fitting in this divided world we live in today. It was surprisingly heartfelt with Bob, a wonderful addition to the cast. Florence Pugh is essentially the lead as Yelena, and she has a bond with Bob, Louis Pullman, as they both feel alone in the world. I love her character and was 100% on her side throughout. The cast are all great, with Wyatt Russell returning as U.S. Agent aka Walker, who's still a complicated character, but is more sympathetic here than he was in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Fans of Taskmaster will be disappointed at their small role, and Ghost looks cool but isn't much of a character. The focus here is really on Yelena and Bob. David Harbour provides the humor as Alexei, mostly talking nonsense, but his sheer enthusiasm leaps off the screen, and what could easily have been an annoying character ends up keeping the team together. On the action front, there are plenty of fight scenes, with real explosions and impressive stunts. Bucky's rescue scene makes him one of the coolest characters in the MCU, and I love seeing how he has progressed since the Winter Soldier. There are 2 post-credit scenes as always, which I of course will not spoil, but the second one is cool. Overall, Marvel's Thunderbolts was far more entertaining than I expected, and the idea of Depression being a villain was a fresh way to take the story. It could easily have just been the usual quips and CG set pieces, but I felt like they wanted to tell a real story here. It's not perfect, but there are some great action scenes and stunts, making this a fun one to see on the big screen. The marketing for Thunderbolts has been going all in with the A24 vibes, using the film's tech teams such as Everything Everywhere All at Once composer Sun Lux, the Green Knight cinematographer Andrew Draws Palermo, and Beef director Jake Schreier, which was a good move considering how well crafted the film is amongst the rest of the recent Marvel slate. The color grade looks like how movies should look, the score doesn't feel generic, and much of the film feels like there was an actual director behind it rather than a boardroom of executives trying to sell their next toy. Unlike many modern superhero films, Thunderbolts has thematic depth, super interesting ideas, and one of my favorite third act sequences in recent memory. From an opening parachute stunt from the Merdeka that Florence Pugh does for real, Tom Cruise would be proud, Thunderbolts delivers in the action department like few superhero films have in recent years. The last cool stunt in the MCU was the knife flip that Sebastian Stan did 11 years ago in Captain America, The Winter Soldier, whereas Thunderbolts * is filled to the brim with spectacularly choreographed action and super fun set pieces that have a ton of weight and momentum to them. The action sequence where the Thunderbolts first meet is a joyful free-for-all that showcases the team's individual capabilities as characters and combatants, and once that sequence is over, Thunderbolts just goes. That said, Thunderbolts wouldn't work without its great characters and star-studded ensemble cast, led by Florence Pugh and joined by David Harbour, Wyatt Russell, Sebastian Stan, Hannah John Kamen, Louis Pullman, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus. The banter between the Thunderbolts is sharp and witty, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus chews up every line she's given in a delightful performance that uses her Veep experience very well as a slimy CIA director with some serious reputational issues. There's some slight political commentary about Dreyfus' character that has more nuance than the entirety of the latest Captain America film, but I found the film's commentary on the ebb and flow between light and dark much more interesting. The connective tissue between the Thunderbolts is that they're all either former MCU villains or have cloudy morals. 90% of the team are mercenaries of the past and present, with the only exception being David Harbour's Red Guardian, the USSR's knockoff of Captain America. These are characters who have done terrible things and have to reckon with them, and try their very hardest to escape the darkness within them. It's an emotional hook with great payoff, especially with Louis Pullman's portrayal of Sentry/Void, a superhero/supervillain whose superpowers are essentially a moral yin-yang. The good-bad binary set by Sentry and Void opens an avenue for the team to walk the line between morals, making way for complex character arcs that feel emotionally rewarding and earned. The entire third act of Thunderbolt is probably one of my favorite superhero third acts ever, opting for a more surrealist lens rather than the usual CGI-infested battle sequence. The entire sequence takes place within an abstract concept of space, which I found super refreshing and interesting. The emotional stakes are prioritized against the usual save the world stuff, which made for a memorable conclusion that had me feeling satisfied and happy when the film cut to credits. The post-credit scenes were super cool too, which made me feel simultaneously well-fed and excited for what's next, which I haven't felt coming out of a Marvel movie in years. After the decline of Marvel in recent years, Thunderbolts was a fun change of pace that I feel like the franchise needed. 2025 has been pretty shaky so far between the dismal Captain America, Brave New World and the Just OK Daredevil reboot on Disney+, but this felt like a step in the right direction. I hope to God that this momentum keeps up with Fantastic Four, First Steps in July, because I haven't felt this optimistic about superhero films in a while. Amid a climate in which most fans sense that Marvel Studios just isn't as fun as it used to be and that the most beloved characters in the franchise have been exhausted, the company drops a movie that's essentially about heroes who struggle to leave the shadows of their more famous counterparts. And it, mostly, works. Thunderbolts is an odd duck of a superhero flick, one that almost leans into the skid of the MCU, and, by doing so, might actually straighten it out. It can't quite shake loose of the consistent problems in the MCU's recent output, turn a light on. Still, it challenges blockbuster fans in unexpected ways, presenting them with richer acting than we've seen in these films in some time and, perhaps most shockingly, a final act that's emotionally grounded instead of just CGI things go boom. It ends on a note that feels like a preview for another movie, or movies, a common problem in the MCU, but this time it's almost as interesting a final touch narratively as it is driven by marketing. Could the MCU get its groove back with a group of outcasts who defy what it means to be a hero? Maybe it was always the only way they could. The first act of Thunderbolts is undeniably its weakest. Getting this group together under the thumb of the mediocre villain Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, lacks depth, feeling like little more than blockbuster wheel spinning. So many of these films feel like contractual obligations more than passion projects, that box-checking casts a cloud on this already underlit film. Just look at its first few scenes of yawn-inducing congressional investigations and reunions with characters we barely remember. That's when we're reconnected with Yelena Belova, Florence Pugh, emotionally numbed by the death of her sister, Black Widow, in Avengers: Endgame. Yelena works for Valentina as a sort of Black Ops Avenger, but she's ready to move on after her latest job destroying evidence for the CIA. Of course, covert government operations are like the mob, you don't just retire. So when Yelena is sent on another cleanup mission, she's startled to find fellow Valentina employees at the same location, a facility about to go up in flames. Valentina, who is under congressional investigation, is seeking to destroy evidence, and Yelena knows too much to keep around. She's not alone. At the remote facility, she runs into John Walker aka US Agent, Wyatt Russell, Ava Starr aka Ghost, Hannah John Kamen, and the quickly exterminated Taskmaster, Olga Kurylenko. In classic MCU fashion, it's one of those scenes in which it feels like you need to have done some homework to really keep up with it, in that these three characters were initially defined in Ant-Man and the Wasp, Black Widow, and the TV show The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It again feels like you need notes, as these movies and shows have gotten too abundant to track. Yelena, Ghost, and Walker are startled to find someone else at the facility, an ordinary guy named Bob, Louis Pullman, who ends up being anything but ordinary. Before long, Yelena's father Red Guardian, David Harbour, and Bucky Barnes aka the Winter Soldier, Sebastian Stan, have joined the crew of Burned Assets, who unite to take down Valentina, only to learn that their biggest threat may be one of their own. Thunderbolts leans into the self-serious tone of much of Marvel lately by embedding it in the film's subject matter and visual language. Even the opening Marvel logo is drained of color, something that's largely followed by the palette of the film that follows. Red Guardian's outfit looks closer to brown in a film that's been so desaturated that when a guy in a yellow chicken outfit shows up late, it's almost a jump scare. At times, the drab filmmaking feels thematically resonant. But there are more visually creative ways to do it than the ones employed by the incredible cinematographer Andrew Draws Palermo, the Green Knight, who falls victim to the paint-by-numbers approach to these films, and the only paint colors he has are brown and browner. It doesn't help that Schreier's action choreography doesn't shine, leaving us with too little to hold onto as this film takes off. Yet it somehow finds a way to reach its destination. By the time the crew is together, following a standout car chase sequence in which Bucky joins the gang, the pieces start falling into place. Of course, it helps a great deal to have multiple Oscar nominees in the cast. The best MCU films are often elevated by actual performances from actors who don't just meet fan expectations of comic book characters brought to three-dimensional life but exceed them. Think Robert Downey Jr. and Chadwick Boseman, and that's what Pugh does here, using Yelena's depression as a through line to find her character's rhythm instead of just as a crutch. Pullman is also excellent, finding complex notes in a role that could have just been CGI-enhanced gobbledygook. Harbour is having a blast in what is basically the comic relief role, and Russell finds shades of a wannabe leader who knows he hasn't exactly been on the hero's journey. Ghost is so woefully underwritten that John Kamen can't make much of an impact, and Stan looks like he's grown weary of playing this character, but the ensemble largely works. And the truth is, sometimes that's enough. Some of the best movies in the history of the MCU have thrived off bouncing interesting characters and performances off each other in projects like The Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't expect Thunderbolts to have the same culture-shaping legacy as those projects. Still, I could easily see it bringing fans back to this universe who felt burned after misfires like The Marvels, Brave New World, and the truly dismal Quantumania. As Phase 5 of the MCU comes to a close with this film, The Fantastic Four: First Steps begins the 6th in July. No one would argue that these movies have the cultural impact they did a decade ago. But Thunderbolts reminded this former comic book reader and fan of much of the early films in the MCU and what these blockbusters could do before they got too reliant on multiverses, remind you of the humanity in the heroism. Maybe these second-rate Avengers really are the heroes that 2025 needs. With 2025 already in full swing, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has begun rolling out its trio of feature film entries for the year, starting with Captain America: Brave New World. Directed by Julius Ona, the film stars Anthony Mackie, Harrison Ford, Danny Ramirez, and Tim Blake Nelson, and follows Sam Wilson as the new Captain America, as he uncovers a political conspiracy involving U.S. President Thaddeus Ross, who finds himself under fire both from international leaders and a more insidious threat from within. Released on February 11, 2025, Brave New World drew a mixed response from critics and audiences alike. While some praised the performances by Mackie and Ford, the film was criticized for its sluggish pacing, formulaic plot beats, underwhelming action, and lack of overall excitement, though its connections to broader MCU lore and strong visual effects earned it some praise. As of this review, the movie has earned over $415 million at the global box office. Now, Marvel Studios and director Jake Schreier unveils the second theatrical entry in their 2025 lineup with Thunderbolts star. The question remains, can this tale of unlikely heroes and reformed assassins rise above its predecessor's lukewarm reception, or does it collapse under the weight of its own ambitions and the ever-expanding MCU? Yelena Belova, Florence Pugh, finds herself adrift, burdened by the ghosts of her Red Room past and the hollowness of her current life. Now working covert missions for CIA Director Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Yelena carries out espionage tasks that feel more like routine than redemption. Meanwhile, Valentina, embroiled in an impeachment scandal in Washington, D.C., scrambles to keep her private organization, known as OXE, under wraps, aided, and often hindered, by her overworked assistant Mel, Geraldine Viswanathan. Seeking to tie up loose ends, Valentina dispatches Yelena to infiltrate a black ops site, only for her to discover other assassins have been sent there under the same pretense: Johnny Walker/US agent, Wyatt Russell, Ava Star/Ghost, Hannah John Kamen, and Antonia Dreykov/Taskmaster, Olga Kurylenko. Realizing they've been manipulated, the group is forced into an uneasy alliance, recognizing they've been deemed expendable. Among them is Bob, Louis Pullman, a mysterious young man with no memory of who he is or why he's there. Despite his amnesia, the ragtag crew takes Bob with them as they break out of the facility, setting off on an unpredictable mission. Their numbers grow further with the arrival of Alexei Shostakov/Red Guardian, David Harbour, Yelena's brash and brutish father, While also entering the fray is Bucky Barnes, Sebastian Stan, the once tormented Winter Soldier turned senator, who's determined to expose Valentina's crimes. As Valentina prepares to launch her next big initiative, the Sentry Project, a program aimed at reshaping the future of superhero development, the team must navigate betrayal, trauma, and uneasy loyalties in a world that increasingly sees them as disposable. Like many others, I found Captain America: Brave New World to be a rather dull and uninspired entry in the MCU. I understand what director Julius Ono was aiming for, a return to more grounded, politically charged storytelling, but the execution ultimately fell flat. What could have been a sharp, character-driven narrative instead came off as a muddled misstep, making it one of Marvel's more disappointing outings in recent memory. On paper, the elements were there: legacy characters, callbacks to earlier MCU installments, and a serious tone reminiscent of Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Yet the film never quite finds its footing, leaning too heavily on recycled ideas and half-formed storylines that lack cohesion or emotional weight. While I appreciated the nods to both The Incredible Hulk and The Eternals, the core narrative in Brave New World felt limp and largely forgettable. Perhaps the film's strongest asset was Harrison Ford's presence as Thaddeus Ross, stepping into the role following the late William Hurt. Ford brings gravitas and intensity to the part, but even his scenes feel underutilized, leaving potential untapped. Ultimately, Brave New World tries to do too much without doing anything particularly well. It bites off more than it can chew and ends up offering a bland, lackluster take on the new Captain America legacy, failing to live up to the standards set by its predecessors. This brings me back to Thunderbolts, a 2025 superhero ensemble that marks the second MCU theatrical release of the year and the 36th overall entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I honestly can't recall exactly when I first heard about the project, but the title alone piqued my curiosity. With a name like Thunderbolts**, it seemed like a clear reference to Thaddeus "Thunderbolt" Ross, suggesting he might play a central role, perhaps even leading the team. That assumption felt all the more likely following Brave New World, especially with Harrison Ford having stepped into the role. However, that assumption didn't materialize. Then came the announcements of returning characters Yelena, Red Guardian, John Walker, Ghost, and Taskmaster, all portrayed once again by their original actors. That lineup alone was enough to grab my attention. As promotional material for the film began to roll out, including posters and trailers, I saw all the familiar Marvel hallmarks: big budget action, punchy humor, and a well-cut preview filled with kinetic energy. It followed the tried and true formula, but like many fans, I couldn't help but wonder if the magic had worn thin. Recent MCU entries, including Brave New World, had underwhelmed both critically and creatively, and I feared Thunderbolts might follow suit. Still, I was genuinely excited when the film finally premiered on May 2, 2025. I caught it opening weekend, though I waited a bit to write this review, partly to finish my thoughts on Brave New World, and partly to let this one settle in. Now that I've had time to reflect, I can confidently say that Thunderbolt delivers. In fact, it's one of the stronger Marvel entries in recent memory. The film blends the studio's signature blockbuster action and comedic rhythm with a sturdier emotional core, strengthened by a sharp lead cast and surprisingly weighty themes. While there are occasional visual stumbles and some uneven patches, the overall result is an engaging, character-driven ride, and a definite step in the right direction for the MCU. Thunderbolts is directed by Jake Schreier, whose previous work includes the indie sci-fi drama Robot and Frank and the teen dramedy Paper Towns. While his background leans more toward television than major studio blockbusters, I recall reviewing Paper Towns when it was released. Flawed, yes, but a charming and earnest film with solid emotional undertones. Given that resume, bringing Schreier in to helm the next major Marvel Cinematic Universe installment was an unorthodox choice, to say the least. However, in a surprising and welcome twist, Schreier proves to be an inspired pick. he manages to deliver a film that's both entertaining and emotionally resonant, a rare feat in the MCU's more recent output. Schreier's fresh perspective is arguably one of Thunderbolts' greatest strengths. By shifting focus away from the franchise's usual A-listers and instead spotlighting lesser-known, secondary characters, he allows a different kind of superhero story to emerge, one centered on outcasts and morally gray figures trying to find purpose. Aside from Bucky Barnes, the team is made up of characters who've mostly lived on the fringes of previous films, so giving them the stage here feels refreshing and deserved. In many ways, Thunderbolts plays like Marvel Studios' answer to DC Suicide Squad films, but with stronger character dynamics and a more cohesive narrative. While comparisons are inevitable, Schreier's take is arguably more successful, striking a clearer tone and allowing the ensemble to genuinely shine. Naturally, the film retains many of Marvel Studios' signature hallmarks, namely the blend of action and humor. How well that formula lands may vary depending on your taste, but for me, the comedy worked more often than not. Several scenes prompted genuine laughs, especially through character interactions and situational humor. The team's back-and-forth banter is one of the movie's most entertaining features, providing a steady rhythm of sarcasm, snark, and emotional honesty that Schreier handles with care. These exchanges feel like the film's bread and butter, adding both levity and personality. The action sequences, while somewhat limited in number, are well executed and engaging, though a bit more wouldn't have hurt. Still, Schreier earns credit for staging both humor and set pieces effectively, ensuring the film maintains momentum while never losing sight of its characters. What sets Thunderbolts apart from being just another run-of-the-mill superhero outing is its willingness to explore deeper, more mature thematic territory, particularly in the realm of mental health. The film touches on this subject with surprising sincerity, embracing a darker, more introspective tone than what audiences typically expect from a Marvel release. Many of the main characters in Thunderbolts carry emotional scars, haunted by their pasts and shaped by personal trauma. As the narrative unfolds, several of them are forced to confront these buried wounds head-on, adding weight and authenticity to their arcs. It's a bold and refreshing direction, one that resonates beyond the usual heroics and visual spectacle. The truth is, you don't need to wear a cape to understand the struggle of internal pain. Many people carry emotional burdens and try to suppress them instead of facing them. Schreier captures this human truth with sensitivity and nuance, crafting a story that not only entertains but also acknowledges the quiet battles so many endure, making Thunderbolts * one of the more thematically resonant entries in the MCU to date. In line with that grounded approach is the film's third act, which genuinely took me by surprise, in the best way possible. Rather than following the typical comic book formula of staging a climactic showdown in a bustling metropolitan city, director Jake Schreier opts for a more unconventional route. While the finale still includes some of the expected blockbuster beats, Schreier leans into a more psychological angle for the resolution, favoring emotional tension and character-driven stakes over a standard hero vs villain brawl. It's a welcome detour from the norm, offering a narrative curveball that feels both refreshing and thematically resonant. Certain story elements could have been tightened, and some character arcs deserved a stronger spotlight during this stretch, more on that below, but overall, the choice to subvert expectations paid off, and I didn't see it coming. This bold shift fits well within Thunderbolts' broader identity. Schreier delivers a superhero film that not only taps into the spirit of classic Marvel storytelling, but also demonstrates a firmer grasp on character depth and narrative focus, something that's been noticeably lacking in many of the franchise's more recent outings. From a presentation standpoint, Thunderbolts * meets the industry standards expected of modern blockbuster tentpoles, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. The film doesn't aim to dazzle with sprawling, fantastical landscapes or distant alien worlds. Instead, it grounds itself in a blend of real-world settings with light touches of superhero flair. This approach feels intentional, placing more narrative focus on character dynamics and story progression rather than on elaborate world building. From the high-tech, covered OXE bunker to the urban grit of New York City, the film offers a solid variety of visually engaging set pieces. The production design is bolstered by strong efforts from the costume, hair, and makeup departments, all of whom contribute meaningfully to the physical aesthetic of the characters. The attention to detail in wardrobes and styling feels purposeful and fitting. Credit is due to Grace Yoon, production design, Gene Serdna, set decoration, Sanya Milkovic-Hayes, costume design, and the full art direction and hair/makeup teams for crafting a world that maintains Marvel's signature balance, one foot in grounded reality, the other in comic book spectacle. Visually, the film also benefits from the sharp cinematography of Andrew Draws Palermo, whose lens captures the gritty, street-level nature of the story while still delivering moments of cinematic grandeur. His framing choices elevate several key sequences, blending intimacy with scale in ways that serve both the action and the emotional beats. Complementing the visuals is the film's score, composed by experimental music group Sun Lux. Their orchestral work ranges from bombastic and intense to somber and introspective, striking the right tone throughout the film's many shifting moods. The score enhances both the superhero drama and the personal moments, lending the story an additional layer of emotional resonance. Rounding out the audio experience is a strong lineup of licensed tracks that are woven into the narrative with care, each song choice feeling purposeful and well-placed, adding further style and rhythm to the film's atmosphere. Unfortunately, Thunderbolts isn't without its shortcomings, elements that, while not enough to derail the entire film, do prevent it from reaching the heights of superhero greatness it clearly aspires to. Chief among these is the film's occasionally scattered narrative focus. While there's a defined end goal driving the plot forward, the movie sometimes veers off course with detours into unnecessary comedic beats or supporting character tangents. These moments, while not entirely unwelcome, disrupt the pacing and could have benefited from more finesse. A tighter, more streamlined narrative would have helped maintain momentum and better served the film's emotional and thematic weight. Another area where the film falters is in its tonal balance between grounded storytelling and conventional comic book spectacle. Thunderbolts * frequently highlights the fact that most of its central team members lack traditional superpowers, often playing this up for laughs with lines about punching and shooting their way through problems. Yet ironically, the team's primary antagonist does possess superhuman abilities, creating a bit of tonal dissonance that undercuts the film's intended street-level aesthetic. One particular scene where the group encounters this powerful threat comes off as especially hokey and undermines the tension. A more grounded narrative approach, leaning further into espionage, grit, and personal stakes, could have created a stronger, more consistent experience. Additionally, the film could have used a touch more action, while what's presented works. A few more dynamic set pieces would have helped amplify the visual energy and tension. On top of that, a few of the story mechanics and character choices feel undercooked or awkwardly executed, most notably surrounding Valentina and her Project Sentry initiative. The idea of manufacturing a new superhero who eventually goes rogue echoes the very premise that led to Ultron's creation in Avengers: Age of Ultron. Has the MCU really not learned from its past mistakes? It feels like a lapse in logic and, frankly, a missed opportunity for more thoughtful writing. Valentina herself, while played with some flair by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, ultimately falls flat as an antagonist. Her motivations are thin, her presence borders on caricature, and she comes off as more cheesy than menacing. Lastly, the film's third act, while refreshingly unconventional in some respects, misses key opportunities to give supporting characters their due, moments that could have added depth and closure to their individual arcs. The cast of Thunderbolts * delivers across the board, with most of the key players, especially those on the superhero team, bringing strong chemistry, sharp timing, and solid character work to the table. The group dynamic is a standout, with each actor contributing humor, emotional depth, and compelling presence to their respective roles. Leading the charge is the return of Yelena Belova, the formidable Black Widow assassin who turned freelance mercenary, once again portrayed by Florence Pugh. First introduced in Black Widow, and later appearing in the Hawkeye series, Yelena has quickly become a fan favorite, and Pugh's performance here further cements that status. With acclaimed roles in Little Women, Oppenheimer, and Dune, Part 2, Pugh continues to showcase her versatility and screen command. As the film's emotional anchor and central protagonist, Yelena carries much of the story's weight, and Pugh rises to the occasion with poise. She strikes a compelling balance between vulnerability and lethal confidence, capturing Yelena's ongoing struggle with her past while maintaining the sardonic wit that has made the character so beloved. Whether she's leading a mission or exchanging quips with her teammates, Pugh commands attention. Her chemistry with the ensemble is natural, and her ability to shift between action, drama, and humor is one of the film's greatest assets. It's a true pleasure to see Yelena step into the spotlight and continue to evolve, with Pugh anchoring the role with both strength and nuance. Stealing many of the film's funniest, and most heartfelt, moments is David Harbour's return as Alexei Shostakov, aka Red Guardian, the Russian super soldier counterpart to Captain America and Yelena's flawed yet caring father figure. First introduced in Black Widow, Alexei's character left a memorable impression, and Harbour picks up right where he left off. Known for his standout work in Stranger Things and Gran Turismo, Harbour brings a seasoned blend of comedy, heart, and bruised ego to the role. His dynamic with Pugh remains one of the emotional highlights of the film, offering a deeper exploration of their fractured but affectionate relationship. While Yelena often shows visible frustration with him, Alexei's parental affection and occasional wisdom give their scenes a warm and grounded core. There's no question that Harbour handles the film's comedic beats with expert timing. His line delivery is impeccable, and his larger-than-life persona fits perfectly within the ensemble. Bringing back a character that could have easily been a one-off was a smart move, and Harbour makes the most of it. His return as Alexei adds levity, emotional texture, and a much-needed dose of heart to Thunderbolts*, making his presence one of the film's most satisfying choices. Thunderbolts* also marks the return of Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier, an enhanced super soldier and longtime ally of Steve Rogers' Captain America, now reimagined as a U.S. congressman. Sebastian Stan, the apprentice, the last full measure, reprises the role once again, bringing with him the quiet gravitas and hardened experience that has come to define Bucky's character. Among the ensemble, Bucky stands out as the most seasoned and strategically capable, making him a natural candidate for the group's de facto leader, a role that feels shared, to some extent, with Yelena. It's refreshing to see a well-established character like Bucky interact with this more unconventional, ragtag lineup of heroes and anti-heroes. Having portrayed the role across multiple MCU films and series, Stan slips back into character with the kind of ease that only comes from years of familiarity. That said, Thunderbolts doesn't offer much in the way of new development for Bucky, and that's not necessarily a flaw. His arc has already undergone substantial growth since his debut in Captain America, the First Avenger, and his current role feels more like a steady continuation rather than a reinvention. While the narrative doesn't dig too deeply into his character this time around, Stan's presence anchors the film, and seeing Bucky step into a more leadership-oriented role is both fitting and satisfying. Returning to the fold is John Walker, aka U.S. Agent, an enhanced super soldier who was once chosen as Steve Rogers' official successor to the Captain America mantle before receiving an honorable discharge, as seen in the Disney Plus series The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Portrayed once again by Wyatt Russell, 22, Jump Street Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, Walker steps into Thunderbolts with a more favorable light cast upon him. While his character was initially met with backlash and disdain during his television debut, the film repositions him with a surprising blend of comedic timing and unexpected camaraderie, especially in his interactions with Yelena and the rest of the team. Russell embraces this evolution well, balancing a tougher, more aggressive edge with subtle notes of regret that simmer beneath the surface. Though the script acknowledges Walker's trauma, it doesn't explore it as deeply as it could have, particularly in the film's final act. That said, his inclusion in the ensemble is a strong one, and Russell arguably delivers an even better performance here than in his original series appearance. One of the returning characters is Ava Starr, aka Ghost, the phasing assassin once again portrayed by Hannah John Kamen, Ready Player One, Killjoys. While her presence is consistent throughout the film, Ava's role feels limited in scope, primarily serving as a reactive character for dialogue exchanges and helping move the action along when needed. Unfortunately, Thunderbolts * offers little in the way of character development for Ava since her last appearance in Ant-Man and the Wasp. That said, it's satisfying to see her no longer suffering from molecular instability, with full control over her powers displayed in sleek, precise moments. Though underutilized, Ghost's return to the MCU is welcome, and John Kamen's performance continues to bring energy and poise to the ensemble. Perhaps the least spotlighted member of the core team is Antonia Dreykov, aka Taskmaster, the formidable assassin with photographic reflexes who returns under the stoic mask once more, played by Olga Kurylenko, Quantum of Solace, Magic City. Without diving into spoiler territory, her role in this story unfolds in a way many may have anticipated and, unfortunately, the result lands with a rather anticlimactic thud. There's little more to say without revealing key plot details, but suffice it to note that her arc doesn't deliver the punch it could have. Among the film's supporting players, Thunderbolts * introduces two notable additions: Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, now serving as CIA director and secretly heading the shady OXE organization, and Bob, a mysterious young man suffering from amnesia yet harboring immense untapped power. These roles are portrayed by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Seinfeld, Veep, and Lewis Pullman, Bad Times at the El Royale, Top Gun, Maverick, respectively. Louis-Dreyfus is undoubtedly a talented performer, and her return as Valentina is welcome, but something about the character's presence in Thunderbolts feels slightly off. It's difficult to pinpoint exactly, but much of her dialogue seems written with a different kind of delivery or persona in mind. The sharp, biting sarcasm we expect from her doesn't quite land the way it should, giving the impression that the lines were meant for another type of performance. While she brings an element of theatricality and clear enjoyment to the role, leaning into Valentina's more over-the-top, scheming side, her character's motivations feel underdeveloped, lacking the sharp edge and narrative weight the film seems to be aiming for. Bob, on the other hand, emerges as one of the film's most intriguing characters. Pullman delivers a quietly compelling performance, grounding Bob with vulnerability and understated strength. As the narrative unfolds, Bob serves as something of a catalyst, his mysterious origins and emotional fragility gradually shaping the story's direction and tone. He becomes a key figure in emphasizing the film's mental health themes, embodying the inner turmoil and identity struggles that define many of Thunderbolt's most poignant moments. Pullman captures that emotional complexity with care, helping the character resonate far beyond just his powers or narrative purpose. The supporting cast helps flesh out the broader web of intrigue. Actress Geraldine Viswanathan, Janet King, Blockers, plays Mel, Valentina's put-upon assistant. Actor Chris Bauer, The Wire, True Blood, takes on the role of Holt, a grizzled OXE security operative, and actor Wendell Pierce, Treem, The Wire, as Congressman Gary. Though each character has varying degrees of screen time, all three actors manage to leave a mark in their respective roles. Still, there's a lingering sense that more could have been done, particularly with Mel, who receives substantial screen presence but is given little meaningful payoff. Their contributions work well enough within the film's framework, even if they fall short of their full potential. Lastly, Thunderbolts features two post-credit scenes, one at the midpoint and another at the very end. Without giving away specifics, the first is a light-hearted beat that elicits a chuckle, while the second sets the stage for a major storyline ahead. A word of advice: pay attention to the song list placement at the very end, which does offer a sly clue about what the final post-credits moment has in store. Forced into uneasy alliances and driven to uncover a covert operation, a ragtag team of secondary heroes and mercenaries must learn to trust one another in order to save the day in Thunderbolts. Director Jake Schreier's latest addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe embraces the chaotic energy of antiheroes and misfits, delivering a street-level narrative that's engaging, unexpectedly emotional, and consistently funny. While the film stumbles in places, bogged down at times by uneven pacing and a few muddled creative decisions, it ultimately succeeds thanks to Schreier's confident direction, a strong thematic through line, sharp comedic writing, and a well-rounded ensemble cast. Personally, I enjoyed Thunderbolts * quite a bit. Sure, I have my share of nitpicks, certain story elements could have been tightened, and a few characters deserved more attention, but the overall package works remarkably well. It's a notable improvement over Brave New World, offering a more cohesive and entertaining experience that still captures the spirit of Marvel while branching into slightly riskier, character-focused territory. While some may claim this film marks a return to the MCU's cinematic roots, I'd frame it more as a promising step forward, one that recognizes the franchise's strengths and begins to recalibrate its storytelling compass. Thus, my recommendation for Thunderbolts earns a confident highly recommended. Hardcore Marvel fans will appreciate the character continuity and deeper emotional beats, while casual moviegoers are likely to enjoy the humor, chemistry, and stylish action. Plus, with the film's secret ending teasing a larger future for the Thunderbolts within the MCU, whether in another standalone installment or a major crossover event, it's clear Marvel has bigger plans in store for this unlikely team. In the end, Thunderbolts * proves that there's still plenty of gas in the tank for the MCU, delivering an action-packed, crowd-pleasing chapter filled with heart, humor, and high-stakes heroism. In the opening frames of Thunderbolts *, the Marvel Studios logo, usually awash in red and silver, appears shrouded in opaque black. Then Yelena, the former Russian assassin, vibrantly played by Florence Pugh, speaks, "There's something wrong with me, an emptiness, a void." Dispatched to Malaysia by her CIA handler and tasked with cleaning up a botched experiment, Yelena admits she's without purpose and drifting. She's haunted by the horrible things she did as a child in the same Soviet program that trained her late sister, Black Widow, not to mention the awful things she has done in the years since. Eventually, she's faced with a living embodiment of her psychological state, a character with an all-consuming dark side whom she's desperate to save. Indeed, here's an entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that isn't about saving the multiverse, the planet, or even a city from destruction. It's about helping your friends deal with their destructive side and, by extension, the throes of bipolar disorder. That's not just subtext or a theme, it's part of the central narrative, making this the most human entry in the MCU and easily one of its best and most compelling offerings in recent years. From the marketing campaign that underlines its A24-verse talent to the hardening underdog status of its main characters, Thunderbolts * announces itself as an antidote to superhero fatigue. But the more things change, the more they stay the same. Despite being populated by a group of defective losers, the titular team assembles not unlike Earth's mightiest heroes, the Avengers, to stop an unbeatable threat. While the story structure proves superficially familiar, what makes the movie unique among the increasingly homogenized entries of the MCU is its surprising humanity. The latest Marvel Cinematic team consists of several misfits, former villains, and unstable newcomers, each trying to prove themselves despite their mistakes. And it's not just that they're scrappy antiheroes, they also enrich the movie's commentary about depressive impulses, they grapple with guilt, shame, and regret, they face and overcome suicidal thoughts. Although decidedly heavy, it's more rewarding than the usual MCU formula. Personally, I find it easier to root for someone with relatable mental health issues than a cocky billionaire, Norse god, or walking chunk of Americana. Still, the asterisk in the title may be too bold in proclaiming the movie's uniqueness in the superhero genre. A cynic might point out that the MCU already produced a team of outcasts and ex-baddies with James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. Warner Brothers, too, explored a similar concept with two loosely connected Suicide Squad features, the second directed by Gunn in 2021. With Gunn having departed the MCU to run the DC Universe at Warner Bros., overseer Kevin Feige resolved to fly a new freak flag in his arena. The titular protagonists aren't unstoppable superheroes who seem relatable because of their wisecracks and infighting. They're fallible, antisocial, and almost forgotten side characters from previous MCU movies and shows, whom some casual viewers may not even recognize. Moreover, their mere punch-and-shoot abilities limit their effectiveness, and their physical vulnerabilities are echoed by their psychological insecurities and troubled personal histories. Take Yelena, who feels adrift working for CIA Director Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, executing one mission after another. Yelena wants a more public role to find fulfillment by helping others instead of numbing wet work. However, Valentina is facing impeachment for some shady schemes, so she plans to tie up all of her loose ends at once. Yelena finds herself targeted for termination along with Valentina's other covert operatives. Among them is John Walker, Wyatt Russell, Steve Rogers' would-be replacement as Captain America, who washed out because of his anger issues in the limited series The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, 2021. There's also Ghost, Hannah John Kamen, last seen in Ant-Man and the Wasp, 2018, who can phase through solid objects. The assassin Taskmaster, Olga Kurylenko, from Black Widow, 2021, also appears. They're later joined by Yelena's brash and boisterous father, Red Guardian, David Harbour, the Soviet counterpart to Captain America. They're also given some guidance by Bucky Barnes, Sebastian Stan, who has, for the moment, traded his Winter Soldier role for a seat in Congress. Each of them questions whether they're hero material, yet their self-hatred and doubt make them more complex than your usual superhero. How appropriate, then, that the newly christened team, its unofficial name taken from Yelena's child soccer team, faces an imposing new foe defined by his duality and inner conflict split between an aspirational hero and an uncontrollable villain. Enter Bob, Louis Pullman, a former meth addict with a troubled past and a tendency for extreme highs and lows. He also happens to be the only survivor of Valentina's attempt to engineer a superhero replacement for the now absent Avengers. In a storyline reminiscent of Amazon Prime Video's The Boys, 2019 present, where the resident Superman, known as Homelander, also happens to be an egomaniacal head case, Bob becomes the all-powerful Sentry, whose shadow self emerges as a black-as-pitch entity. By this time, Yelena and company endear themselves to Bob and will risk everything to save him from himself. Refreshingly, Thunderbolts avoids certain aspects of the MCU's so-called house style and stands apart thanks to the creatives behind the camera. That includes director Jake Schreier, whose feature film credits are less impressive than his various episodes of great television, such as Netflix's Beef, 2023, and The Woefully Underseen Minx, 2022 to 2023. Cinematographer Andrew Draws Palermo, who has given to David Lowery projects their visual luster, see A Ghost Story, 2017, and The Green Knight, 2020, lends the visuals a texture, intimacy, and naturalness seldom found in the digital flatness of some MCU features. Even the score by avant-garde band Sun Lux represents a welcome change from the typical generic background music accompanying MCU films. And while the production cannot avoid a CGI-heavy climax, it's in service of our new heroes racing to save everyday citizens from falling debris and each other from shame rooms that reflect their inner pain. The screenplay was written by longtime Marvel contributor Eric Pearson and MCU newcomer Joanna Kahlo, who has written for Beef, The Bear, 2022 present, and most significantly, BoJack Horseman, 2014 to 2020, one of the best shows ever made about depression. Kahlo seems like the secret weapon who made Thunderbolts * what it is. The script imbues these would-be superheroes with an emotional rawness that feels more genuine than the usual human conflicts that arise in superhero fare. It also inspires some terrific acting instead of overpaid celebrities coasting through their performances against a green screen backdrop. Pugh is wonderful and heartening as Yelena, who has already stolen the spotlight in Black Widow and the miniseries Hawkeye, 2021. Few people can play their roles' emotional wounds as well as her. And while the entire cast has its moments, Pullman is excellent as Bob, also his amusingly plain name in 2022's Top Gun, Maverick, lost and caught between two polar frames of mind. Of course, these deviations from the typical Marvel playbook result from the franchise's flailing desperation to find its groove in the post-coital dysphoria following Avengers, Endgame, 2019. That's 6 years of uneven and underwhelming MCU titles, which, apart from a few exceptions, have gotten lost in too many characters, too many supplementary shows on Disney+, and little overall direction. Thunderbolts is just the latest of several movies that have tried to swing the series onto a new path, leading to the doubtlessly overstuffed crossover events with Avengers, Doomsday and Avengers, Secret Wars in 2026 and 2027, respectively. However, these impending event movies don't have the same gravitational pull that Thanos and the Infinity Stones did, partly because they're dependent on a disorderly multiverse setup that, by definition, scatters what was previously a clear, endgame. Occasional bright spots like Thunderbolts * remind us that, though the MCU's heyday has passed and, as a whole, may be more fragmented than ever, there's still potential for the occasional standout installment in the franchise. For Marvel fans, Thunderbolts may well be remembered as the film that got the hobbling MCU franchise back on track, although that's mostly just wishful thinking from those who've been faithfully keeping up with every sequel, spin-off, and TV series Marvel pumps into the oversaturated marketplace. They, like the super successful comics studio, keep hoping to recreate the thrill of the Avengers movies. But those viewing hours are gone forever, and so too is the feeling that keeping up with Marvel was somehow vital to the larger cultural conversation. For the rest of us, precious few of these movies rise to the level of essential viewing apart from the self-skewering Deadpool and Wolverine, which poked fun at how seriously people take comic book movies. Ill-advisedly expecting audiences to know, or at least care, about a handful of deep-cut fringe characters, Thunderbolts takes place in the same universe saved and then almost immediately abandoned by Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, and Black Widow. Leaning hard into an irreverently humorous tone, director Jake Schreier, Robot and Frank, presents the film as a reluctant allies comedy, grafted onto an earnest allegory about facing personal trauma and working through mental illness as a team. However frivolous it may sound, Schreier's scrappy ensemble effort is anything but a one-off, and considering its almost $200 million budget, not so scrappy either. It may star 6 characters you either forgot about or couldn't name if your life depended on it, but going forward, you'll be expected to know who they are and could be quizzed on events that happen in Thunderbolts * at any time, starting with the asterisk that appears after the title, and the explanation that rewards opening weekend audiences with spoiling for everyone who catches up with it late. Meanwhile, that sound you hear isn't the hype engine that Disney's marketing department has ginned up on social media, but the bottom of the barrel being dredged as Marvel Studios exploits a handful of D-list characters before rebooting its proven and most popular heroes, i.e. the upcoming Fantastic Four movie. The Dirty Half-Dozen/Magnificent Six featured here a mix of hot-headed rejects and randos can't agree on what to call themselves, but have no illusions about one thing: they're the losers of the MCU. It's hard for them to feel otherwise when government secret keeper Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, strategically gives 4 of these rogue operatives a mission to eliminate one another. While duking it out in a classified facility far from civilization, Yelena Belova, Florence Pugh, John Walker, Wyatt Russell, Ghost, Hannah John Kamen, and Taskmaster, Olga Kurylenko, realize they're not alone. They're joined by an amnesiac in Scrubs, who identifies himself as Bob Reynolds, Louis Pullman, but was clearly part of some top-secret experiment or other. Such elements will likely prove confusing for those who don't have a PhD in Marvel studies, or else just stopped paying close attention when the MCU train jumped the rails around the time Phase 3 wrapped in 2019. That's when Avengers Endgame buried several heroes and sent others splintering off into the multiverse of diminishing returns. Thunderbolts * doesn't clearly explain who Yelena is. For example, like her late sister, Black Widow, she has no powers, only skills, which include acrobatics, martial arts and empathy uncommon of an assassin. A bearded guy named Red Guardian, David Harbour, was like a father figure to her at some point, but now runs a limo service and mopes around his place, dressed in what looks like the Soviet version of a Captain America costume. Taskmaster is another loose end from the Black Widow movie, which you might want to catch up on before watching. Marvel honcho Kevin Feige must have big plans for Bucky Barnes, Sebastian Stan, the strong-armed sidekick who keeps showing up in these movies, despite having very little to do. Most of Thunderbolts smells like reshoots and ADR-enhanced attempts to steer this lumbering franchise back towards something mainstream audiences might show up to see in theaters. At the core of the film is a villain whom we ought not name. Marketing materials have been referring to him simply as the Void, but whose dark powers, allegedly stronger than all of the Avengers rolled into one, are suggested in the opening seconds, when a shadow passes over the Marvel Studios logo, rendering the flickering pulp letters an ominous matte black. Those who follow these story arcs in pulp form will presumably appreciate the movie's fresh take on a figure who could go either way, toward allyship or destruction. He's a new addition to the MCU, while the others are all low-level chumps ordered around by Valentina. A Veep-like bureaucrat Louis Dreyfus plays with a shock of white hair in front, a scheming look on her face and just the right dose of "don't take any of this too seriously" in her voice. She's accompanied at all times by her assistant Mel, Blocker's breakout Geraldine Viswanathan, whose comedic bona fides are another clue to this movie's tongue-in-cheek tone. For all of one scene, it seems like the task of this motley assortment of anti-heroes will be to survive one another. But as Mel tells her boss, is it possible they've joined forces against you? Later, in the absence of starrier supers, as The Incredibles described them, Yelena and her gang of bickering misfits will need to face their own traumas and save their new friend Bob from Valentina's plans. That's about as specific as one can get without giving too much away. At the press screening, Marvel fans seem to appreciate the first two-thirds of the movie, which runs on that jokey Joss Whedon energy, full of wisecracks about Uber, DoorDash, and Dr. Phil. For me, Thunderbolts * dragged until the Void showed up. Then it started to feel like something else, the kind of modestly budgeted supernatural thriller, a la Flatliners or The Craft, in which a tormented character could be lost to his own darkness and demons, if not for the intervention of his similarly troubled friends. Unfortunately, it's all in service of a bummer ending, the worst since Avengers: Infinity War, meant to fuel this exhausting franchise for another few years, till the Avengers return in 2027. As with the Guardians of the Galaxy films, what works here is the uneasy tension within a team that comes together out of necessity, rather than any natural sense of affinity. The Marvel strategists were smart to anchor the film with Yelena not because she's an especially compelling character, but on account of who's playing her. In Pugh's hands, Yelena is facing a more relatable identity crisis than your typical Marvel hero. Where her A-list counterparts are burdened by the weight of what Spider-Man identified as great power and great responsibility, the Thunderbolts resemble a great many Zoomers. They feel overwhelmed and underappreciated, don't necessarily recognize or believe in their own powers, and are called to greatness all the same. Sure, this group's name is a punchline, lifted from a peewee soccer team that never won a game. The title doesn't appear until the very end, immediately followed by a different name for this posse. At any rate, supporting each other proves to be as vital as success on this particular mission. And in the absence of the Avengers, this lot will have to do. Not often we cover Marvel stuff nowadays. Partly due to the homeworky nature of the franchise's interconnected structure, but also largely due to me not being able to figure out how to talk about some of them. I know I like some of them, but I don't always know how to phrase it, especially with how many thoughts might be going through my head about all the everything in each entry. Anyhow, Let's char about this bunch of idiots. After finding themselves face to face with each other in a bunker, a group of mercenaries have to band together in order to find the person who pitted them against each other and get some answers, all while facing their own haunted pasts. The narrative in Thunderbolts feels oddly refreshing within the MCU, reining in the large-scale end-of-the-world shenanigans a tad in favor of a more character-focused tale dealing with personal trauma, mental health, and the importance of working together. How we can let our darkness define us, and what we can do to deal with it. It's not necessarily the most nuanced take on these themes out there, but it's an admirable attempt that generally succeeds in bringing a bit of emotional heft to proceedings, all while also presenting an engaging and entertaining revenge thriller and superhero adventure. Its pace maybe moves a little too snappily at a point. I wish we could have slowed down just a hair, but for the most part I found my trip with these anti-heroes quite riveting. What the story might slightly lack, the characters more than make up for. Figures we've seen in other entries become way more fleshed out and compelling, and even one or two new figures become favorites. Yelena, a character first introduced in Black Widow, is more or less the center of the story, a de facto lead. She's dealing with past traumas that has put her into a depressive slump, and the movie does a good job of giving her a really compelling personal arc. And Florence Pugh is fantastic in the role. Walker, a bit of a dick first introduced in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, goes from a relatively entertaining figure to a really interesting dude, with Wyatt Russell giving a really good performance. Hannah John Kamen is great as the returning Ghost, David Harbour is a major scene stealer as Red Guardian, and the other returning actors such as Sebastian Stan, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and Olga Kurylenko are all good too. As far as new additions, I just want to briefly touch on one, Bob, played by Louis Pullman. Bob is fucking great, a super interesting, entertaining, and layered figure we meet in the story, who gets this deeply fascinating arc that I loved, with Pullman delivering a great performance. It's a really compelling cast of characters portrayed by some killer actors. The score for the movie was composed by experimental group Sun Lux, and it's great. Emotional, bombastic, propulsive, and oddly playful for a superhero film, there's this fun sonic nuance to it that makes it stick out somewhat amongst the various scores of the genre and franchise. It made my ears perk up on more than one occasion, thanks to just how interesting and genuinely great it is. Inspired by various Marvel comics, Thunderbolts was directed by Jake Schreier, and it's nice to get an MCU flick that actually feels, for lack of a better word, directed. Like so many of the movies, while entertaining, don't necessarily feel like they have some vision to the craft, but here there's actual purpose to setups, cuts, moves, and even transitions. It genuinely feels like Schreier was allowed to take his time and actually cook. It leads to creative action set pieces and some highly entertaining and slick transitions. It also helps that the cinematography by Andrew Draws Palermo, while a little washed out in the colors at times, looks genuinely good. It feels and looks really good. After finding themselves ensnared in a death trap, an unconventional team of antiheroes must go on a dangerous mission that will force them to confront the darkest corners of their pasts. First off, I have to say that if these are our new Avengers, then I am not interested. But who knows what Marvel will do at this point, as they have shown us again and again that they don't have a long-term plan. The messy production of this movie was just further proof of that. The film itself ended up being much better than I'd expected it would be, but I cannot say that I was ever at all riveted while watching it. It's serviceable superhero entertainment and not much more than that. But it's certainly better than Captain America 4, and at this point in the MCU's run, you can't really ask for more than just a solid flick. As I've already stated above, this team should not be the official Avengers team because they are simply uninteresting and underdeveloped, with only a few exceptions. Sebastian Stan is now an Oscar nominee, so he is above the role of Bucky, and he was very scarcely used here. Other characters are all pretty much useless, as John Walker, Taskmaster, and everyone else was just there to have one or two cool action scenes and nothing more than that. I did not care for them because the movie did not care for them. Julia Louis-Dreyfus as Valentina served as Marvel's take on Tulsi Gabbard. The styling was pretty much the exact same, which was appalling to me, and it just goes to show how trashy and biased the studio can be. Furthermore, the actress wasn't convicting in the role and the character was tiresome. David Harbour as Yelena's dad was as lovable and fun as ever, while the villain was overall okay. I liked his look, but he could have been more menacing. The main reason to see this movie is obviously for Yelena. Florence Pugh stole the show back in Black Widow, and now she also stole this movie from everyone else. Her accent is fun, her character is very well developed, and she looked great as well. Her backstory was emotional, and I loved her relationship with her dad and the rest of the team. Whenever she was on screen, this movie popped. Thunderbolts did not work for me in that third act that was familiar trauma dump that we have seen many times before, but at least it wasn't dumb CGI fest that looked horrendous and messy, so at least it got that going for it. The movie did not balance the action with the emotional stuff all that well, but at least they tried to develop a meaningful storyline for once, so extra props go for that. Jake Schreier is a competent director whom I liked before, and here he definitely managed to elevate the script to greater heights. The use of CGI is minimal for once, which was very refreshing. The action is fun and not overly abundant. The humorous touches were also well handled, though I would have preferred an even more comedic approach that would fit this team quite well. So yes, this movie was so well made across the board, but I could never escape the feeling that I was watching a mid-tier Marvel movie with mid-characters, which is exactly what it is honestly. In what now feels like an alternate timeline, Marvel was consuming contemporary cinema the way Galactus consumed planets in Fantastic Four. Not because people only cared about superheroes, but because that's what theaters kept serving, like Subway only serve wet sandwiches. This culminated in Infinity War and Endgame, a 6-hour corporate funeral pyre where 1/3 of the planet showed up to cry, clap, and briefly believe they'd experienced something resembling catharsis. And then Marvel tried to do it again. Disney unveiled a plan to make the MCU eternal, which immediately killed any appetite for it. The pandemic accelerated things, sure, but pre-Socratic philosopher Heraclitus had already warned them, you can't step into the same river twice. Nobody wanted to wade back in. 5 years later, the MCU is at death's door, and Thunderbolts feels less like the gurgling sound a sink makes right before it empties out. Thunderbolts, aka not Suicide Squad, follows Black Widow's little sister Yelena Belova, Florence Pugh, who is now freelancing for the CIA because assassins need side hustles too. Her boss, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, gets cornered by Congress and responds the way any rational bureaucrat would, by pitting her entire roster of superpowered mercenaries against each other in a Hunger Games of diminishing box office appeal in order not to get scolded. Shockingly, they don't kill one another. Instead, they decide to form one big dysfunctional family unit, travel back to America, and adopt a mysterious human plot device, Pullman. So yes, this is Marvel's version of Suicide Squad, except nobody here is technically a criminal. Yelena and her overly enthusiastic dad, David Harbour, are deemed not hero material because they're Russian, which in Marvel logic is the same thing. Their real crime is failing to believe, or to understand, whatever, in the American dream, and the movie treats that like a felony. Exploitation by a rogue politician is the official excuse, but the underlying problem is simpler. The titular Thunderbolts are unheroic because they don't pass the cultural vibes check. In this universe, being a superhero is about saving people, sure, but it's also about looking like the brochure for US values. Just ask Captain America knockoff John Walker, Wyatt Russell, who was discarded for the cardinal sin of being an asshole in public. Okay, that detail is pretty clever, but it's the only one. I swear. I'd love to tell you Thunderbolts is goofy and flawed in interesting ways, but the whole thing just reeks of corporate insecurity. After a while you can smell executive meddling the same way you can smell Axe body spray in the club. Florence Pugh opens the movie with a voiceover that explains everything like we're watching at the same moment like a jaded private eye. Later, Yelena's dad literally shouts "We are anti-heroes" from a limousine, as if Marvel worried the audience might not pick up on the nuance. The thing is, anti-heroism actually matters. Relatable badasses how adults reconcile good intentions with glaring personal flaws. But in a movie where everyone already has superpowers, you don't need to say the word anti-hero out loud, you just need to actually struggle with something. Fight the establishment. Protect people you don't care about. Stare down your own darkness. Instead, Thunderbolts externalizes that darkness into a literal, dime store mascot the team can drag around and eventually beat up. Because in Marvel movies, you're not allowed to be tormented. Inner turmoil isn't something to explore, it's just another bullshit CGI enemy to kill. Which brings us to Louis Pullman, the aforementioned human mascot. He's easily the best thing about Thunderbolts and, ironically, the closest the movie gets to an actual anti-hero. Pullman plays him with this discreet, harmless stoner energy, like the kid in high school who somehow always had weed but never seemed to know where it came from. That charm is what allows him to double as inner darkness man, the literal embodiment of everyone else's unresolved issues. Sure, the script telegraphs his vulnerability with the subtlety of a car alarm, but at least he has one. He's the only character who isn't a walking PowerPoint slide of obvious traits. Pullman actually gets to wrestle with, wait for it, an inner struggle. In the context of this movies, it's almost disorienting, like seeing Raccoon reading Dostoevsky or a James Gunn movie without a cheap pull-at-your-heartstrings soundtrack, but that Pullman fellow is interesting. Which shouldn't be surprising given who his dad is. Nothing against Florence Pugh, I think she can shine in the right context, but turn poop into gold, that she cannot do. But maybe it's something Pullman might be able to someday. Not gonna lie, Thunderbolts is an absolute shitshow. 2 hours of ugly gray and yellow sludge that feels less like a movie than a panicked ransom note from Disney executives begging you to keep the lights on. The fact that this cost $180 million to produce is almost performance art. Even if it lands one click away on your favorite streaming service, you deserve better. Even if you're tired, drunk, and only want something brainless, you still deserve better. Because if you cave, even once, they will never stop. Marvel will keep churning out that kind of stuff until the sun burns out, and Thunderbolts is proof they're already practicing for the end times and that thing make almost $400 million in profit. Yelena Belova liked being a hero. But a woman's gotta pay the bills. And it's not like her skills as an assassin translate well in, say, telemarketing. And her skills are in demand. Yelena's been working for Valentina Allegra de Fontaine for a while now. As Valentina's been fending off impeachment in her current role as CIA director, Yelena's been cleaning up the woman's former work as head of OXE Group, an incredibly shady conglomerate involved in some incredibly shady projects. Yeah, if the Congressional Impeachment Committee got wind of those projects, Valentina could kiss her cushy CIA job goodbye and say hello to a nice, gray prison cell. So she sends Yelena to, do a little cleaning. Blow up a warehouse here, silence a would-be informant there, you know, the usual. But Yelena is increasingly dissatisfied. I'm not focused, and I'm not happy, and I don't have purpose, she confesses to a bound and gagged security guard, whom she, of course, bound and gagged. It's time for a change. And boy, does Valentina have a change in mind. Ms. de Fontaine sends Yelena off to OXE Group's most especially secret bunker, where all its most especially secret secrets are kept. Someone's trying to steal those secrets, Valentina says, and Yelena needs to kill the thief and destroy everything in that bunker. Funny thing, though. Val said the very same thing to another cleaner she soon meets there, John Walker, who'd been Captain America for, like, a minute before he was driven out by shame and scandal. Val also called Ava Starr, another woman with a checkered past, and who most noticeably dabbled in villainy in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Oh, and she gave a little jingle to Antonia Dreykov, alias Taskmaster, alias the most fearsome assassin that the Black Widow Red Room ever churned out. Yep, Valentina was ready to tie up loose ends and silence her secrets for good, including her secret operatives. Can't have assassins running around and blabbing to CNN, can we? And just in case they didn't all successfully kill each other, why not turn the whole bunker into a giant furnace and incinerate everything? Sounds like a good plan to Val. When the doors on the secret bunker seal tight and the air begins to heat up, the 4 assassins, well, by then, 3 assassins, realize that they've been had. And even though they kinda hate each other, they all now hate Valentina just a wee bit more. They'll have to work together, somehow, to escape. Oh, and they'll have to figure out what to do about Bob. Yeah, that's right. Bob. The guy in the pajamas. The guy who has no idea why he's in a super secret bunker. The guy who feels as out of place as Yelena would feel in a series of telemarketing cubicles. Yelena and her imperfect posse, which, with the addition of Bucky Barnes/Winter Soldier as well as Yelena's own father figure, Alexei/Red Guardian, become the Thunderbolts, do not consider themselves heroes. We're all losers. Yelena says. And yep, every single member has done some bad things. But hey, people can change. And that's the tarnished gem found in Thunderbolts. These failed do-gooders and successful assassins ultimately meld into a group of sacrificial heroes who work together to protect the innocent, perhaps to their own surprise. It's not a quick or seamless process, but they become a team. And while their abilities lack the horsepower of, say, Avengers-level superheroes, their most potent collective power is, and I know this sounds sappy, community. In this superhero movie, a hug can be more powerful than a slug. See, the greatest enemy of the Thunderbolts isn't necessarily Val or the arch-nemesis whom she helps develop. It's regret. Despair. Depression. The big bad here, the Void, isn't just a physical enemy to be beaten. It's a force lurking inside each of our protagonists, and let's be honest, in many of us, too. I have a lot of bad days where I know nothing matters, one character confesses. Perhaps a few of us can relate. But Yelena, familiar with that own black void inside herself, finds a ward against that despair, her relationships, as damaged, as imperfect as they may be. When she learns that one of her own friends is in serious trouble, Yelena knows she can't fix him. But she makes it clear that she'll always be there for him. In the context of the movie, that means a lot. It's telling, perhaps, that the team's name came from Yelena's youth soccer team. That team of Thunderbolts was also a bunch of losers. Yelena says that they didn't win a game the entire season. But she loved it. Her father, Alexei, said that she practically glowed with joy during games. She served as the team's goalie, and Alexei remembered little Yelena explaining why, "I want to be the one everyone can rely on if they make a mistake," she said at the time. If you look at the positive elements section of this review, you can see places where you could hang some spiritual talking points. For instance, most of our characters are looking for redemption. The themes of Community remind us that the threefold cord is not quickly broken, but identifying explicit spiritual content is a different matter. Val's superpowered creation is compared to a god, and she brags that his powers are more powerful than all the Avengers rolled into one. Val's arrogance leads that creation to call himself a god. After all, he reasons, the Avengers had at least one god, Thor, on the roster. If he's stronger than the Avengers as a whole, that makes Val's project a powerful deity indeed. Why would a god take orders from anyone at all, he says. Alexei, aka the Soviet Union's former Red Guardian, reminisces about the days when he was a real hero to his people and adored like a god. You'll find the typical assortment of superhero melees in Thunderbolts. Characters punch and are punched, kick and are kicked, etc. People get beaten up, thrown around, quite literally, and left winded and disheveled. And none of our protagonists adhere to a no-kill ethos. Scores of people likely die here, via bullet or knife, explosion, or helicopter crash. But while the overall violence level is pretty much on par with MCU history, Thunderbolts comes with a few notable wrinkles. Kids are subjected to violence here in one way or another. Many of these scenes take the form of flashbacks, showing how our very flawed protagonists may have received their deepest psychological wounds. And many of them involve someone else. As a child, for example, Yelena lured a fellow Red Room chum into the woods, where an assassin calmly shoots the girl off camera. We see the flashback repeatedly. And in one, when Yelena tries to save the girl attacks, throwing Yelena aside to complete the scene. Another Yelena flashback shows how she assembles a gun faster than her Red Room classmates. As a reward, she's taken aside while the other girls hold out their hands to be whipped. Elsewhere, another character recalls to the moment when her father was murdered, shot in the stomach by someone else. A guy recalls his abusive home life as a child. We don't see the abuse, but we hear how the boy tried to stop his father from assaulting his mom. But his mother scolds the boy, telling him to stop playing the hero. "You always make everything worse," she tells her son. In the present, one girl simply vanishes, transforming into just a black, fading shadow. She's not the only person on screen to disappear like that. A darkness begins to creep across New York City, causing countless people to dissipate like smoke. Someone is shot dozens of times, but he somehow survives. A scientist is accidentally shot in the face. We don't see any blood, but Yelena grouses over the fact that she needed that face to access a secret laboratory. Another victim of an accidental shooting is covered in a bit of blood in that same scene. A masked character gets shot in the head, and some blood oozes from the wound. Sonic weapons disable some would-be heroes. Part of a building explodes. Explosions lift cars and military vehicles up in the air and send them tumbling. A man chokes a woman. Bucky's artificial limb is ripped off his shoulder. Helicopters crash. A vehicle runs straight through a building's floor-to-ceiling windows. Several people are knocked unconscious. Debris threatens to crush and kill civilians. A few characters nearly fall to their deaths. People talk about past violent misdeeds. We hear that scores of volunteers died as part of a scientific experiment. Bob admits that he was a meth addict. We see a flashback to when he was working high as a sign twirler dressed as a chicken, and he beat passers-by with the sign. He was looking for ways to keep his habit fed when he stumbled on an OXE group scientific experiment, which promised him plenty of drugs. Yelena confesses that her evenings feel very much the same. When she gets off work, she goes home and thinks about all the awful things she's done. And then she drinks. And in a flashback that doesn't seem all that long ago, Yelena sits slumped against a bathtub, a couple of empty bottles of booze lying on the floor. Val and others drink champagne during a posh gala. Alexei drinks beer in his apartment. Alexei also works as a limo driver. In one scene, he drives the limo as the rest of the Thunderbolts fret about the mercenaries pursuing them. He asks for someone to hand him a bottle of vodka, which someone does. Still driving, he takes a swig from the bottle before setting it alight and throwing it at their pursuers. As Yelena reminisces about her youth soccer team, she recalls how one of her teammates defecated on the field. Later, Alexei recounts the same story. Bob makes a ton of retching noises after he's first discovered. Valentina lies, and lies, and lies some more. And she's not the only one. We learn that a character alienated his wife and child through inattention to them. Certainly, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has always been well stocked with fallen, fractured heroes. Iron Man's Tony Stark was a heel before he became a hero, and he had his caddish moments well after, too. Thor was a spoiled brat. Bruce Banner had his anger issues. Only Steve Rogers, aka the original Captain America, seemed to come without a closet full of issues. but Thunderbolt brings a new level of dysfunction to the MCU. Staffed by fallen crusaders, one-time assassins, and a guy named Bob, this superhero team is barely super and, most of the time, hardly heroic. Listen, I'm as much a Captain America fan as anyone, and the anti-hero trope can be overused. I like my do-gooders too, do good. And if the Thunderbolts existed in our reality, its members should all pay their debts to society with a little jail time. Redemption is great and all, but you just can't go around killing people without someone saying, hey, a little time in maximum security might do you good. And let's not downplay the movie's problems, the violence, the language, the allusions some make to godhood. But the characters we're asked to follow here don't pretend to be gods. They don't pretend to be even particularly good. Yelena seems particularly attuned to her fallen nature. The weight of her guilt and, we'll just say it, sin weighs on her. The void pulls at her the promise of absolution through annihilation. The whisper of peace through the deadening of thought, of will, perhaps of self. But Alexei, a crazy, embarrassing bear of a man whom Yelena tries to avoid and, for a minute, pretends she doesn't know, even though he helped raise her barrels in with a zest for adventure and the ridiculous idea that these flawed people can be good. They can be a team. They can heal a little bit of the world instead of hurting it, for a change. And in his own unhinged way, Alexei becomes a catalyst for their redemption. Most especially, for Yelena's redemption. When I look at you, I don't see your mistakes, Alexei tells her. In that moment, I thought of our own Heavenly Father, the Holy God who sees beyond our own mistakes and failings and scars and fallenness. He sees the men and women that He created through His joy and generosity. He sees the beautiful people we were designed to be and, with His help, can still be. He sees us and loves us. In fact, He loved us enough to send Jesus to die for our flaws and sins, to restore right relationship with Him, which we could not do on our own. Presumably, the creators of Thunderbolts didn't have God in mind when they made this movie. But they were mindful of the hurt in the world. How cruelly we can be treated, and how cruel we can be in return. How awful we can be to ourselves, especially. And how we so need each other to help us through. In one scene, one of our heroes struggles to hold up a massive slab of stone, weakening slowly as the rock threatens to crush him. But one by one, his friends show up, pushing against the stone at risk to themselves. Until, finally, they push it away. Such a simple scene, really. But in the context of this movie, a powerful one. Life is hard. Sometimes, it can threaten to crush us. But we can help each other. We can, as the good book says, lift each other's burdens. We can be each other's heroes. And together, we can push forward every day, moving through the dark nights of our lives and toward the rising sun. This film, directed by Jake Schreier. Screenplay by Eric Pearson. Story by Eric Pearson. Based on Marvel Comics. Produced by Kevin Feige. Starring Florence Pugh. Cinematography Andrew Draws Palermo. Edited by Angela Catanzaro. Music by Sun Lux. Production company Marvel Studios. Distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion. Release dates April 22, 2025. Running time 127 minutes. Country United States. Language English. Budget $180 million. Box office $382.4 million.